Have you ever carried a secret so vast it seemed to alter the very chemistry of the air you breathed? Not a harmless little secret, like sneaking an extra cookie from the jar, but one that seeps into your veins, that takes root in the quiet spaces between your heartbeats. A secret that lies beside you at night and pulls up a chair at your breakfast table in the morning. If you have, then perhaps you'll understand. And if you're here listening, maybe you're searching for a story that makes your own beautiful, terrifying chaos feel just a little less lonely. So before we begin, do me a kindness, subscribe to this channel. These are the stories that are usually whispered in the dark, the ones you'd never dare to speak aloud. My name is Ethan, and my secret has a name. Clara. She's my father's wife. It began the day I came back home, degree fresh in my hand, clutched like a shield against a world that didn't seem to have a place for me. The prodigal son returning to his father's sprawling coastal estate tale, tucked pride bruised. My father, Michael, a man carved from oak and iron ambition, saw my return as nothing more than a brief detour on my way to success. He was proud in his distant, work-obsessed way. But the house wasn't just his anymore. For 15 years, it had been Clara's as well. Clara, 55, but time had been strangely selective with her. It had softened her voice, given her laugh a low, warm timbre, and silvered the edges of her dark hair. But it had left untouched the light in her eyes and the fluid grace in her movements. Years of teaching yoga had shaped her into something quietly powerful, her body carrying a suppleness that defied the calendar. She smelled faintly of lavender and green tea, a scent that had been the backdrop of my teenage years, a scent of comfort. Now that same scent was the perfume of a gathering storm. We had always shared an easy rapport, more like old friends than stepson and stepmother. But my return shifted the air between us. With my father gone from sunrise to sunset, consumed by his real estate empire, the house belonged mostly to Clara and me. And in the silence of those wide sunlit rooms, every small sound seemed amplified, the soft pad of her bare feet on polished wood, the delicate clink of her teacup on porcelain, the slow exhale of her breath during morning meditation in the garden. As for me, I was adrift. Days spent sending resumes into the void, each rejection like another dead leaf settling at my feet. The house became my entire world, and Clara, she became the sun in its sky. Have you ever found yourself truly seeing someone as though your eyes had been opened? For the first time, I began noticing things I shouldn't have. The way a loose strand of her hair would catch and hold the light. The slight furrow of her brow when she read. The way her silk robe would ripple and cling as she moved through the kitchen. Dangerous details, sparks landing in the dry tinder of my frustration and loneliness. And then came the morning that set everything ablaze. I had a promising job interview, one of the first in months, and because my own bathroom was being repaired, I was in the master suite's walk-in shower. Steam clouded the mirrors, wrapping the room in a thick, humid haze. I stood at the sink, razor in hand, concentrating on the clean line of my jaw, when a knock came at the door. Soft, hesitant. "Ethan, sweetheart, are you decent? I just need to grab my migraine pills from the cabinet." "Sure, come in." I called, my voice muffled by steam. We were family. What was there to think about? She slipped in a whisper of silk and lavender. Her robe was the pale blue of early dawn. She stepped to the sink beside me, reaching for the mirrored cabinet above. The space between us felt suddenly too small, the air too warm, too alive. As she stretched upward, the silk tie of her robe caught on the sharp corner of the cabinet door. Time didn't just slow, it fractured. The knot gave way. The robe fell open. Through the fogged mirror, our eyes met mine, half-shaven, startled. Hers wide, with a sudden, unguarded vulnerability. For a heartbeat that seemed to last an eternity, I didn't see her as Clara, my stepmother. Not as Michael's wife. I saw her simply as a woman, beautiful, unshielded, and achingly real in the humid air. The image burned itself into my mind, the elegant slope of her shoulder, the delicate curve of her breast, the smooth, unblemished skin of her stomach. My breath caught sharp and unsteady, a sound far too loud in the thick, steamy silence. Her own gasp echoed mine like two chords struck in unison. She fumbled with the robe, yanking it, closed her cheeks, blooming a deep crimson I could almost feel radiating against my skin. Our eyes never left each other in the mirror. It was a silent, frantic exchange, shock, embarrassment, and something else. Something darker. Something dangerously alive. "Ethan! I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. She didn't meet my gaze directly, only through that fogged pane of glass, as if even a glance without the mirror's distance would be too much. Her hand rose to her mouth, and in a voice barely audible over the dripping shower, she pleaded, "Please, don't tell your father." Then she was gone, leaving behind only the steam, the scent of lavender, and the furious beating of my heart against my ribs, like a bird trapped in a cage. The interview later that day, I destroyed it in the worst way. How could I speak about 5-year plans and corporate synergy when my entire world had been tilted off its axis by a slip of silk? The rest of the day became a masterclass in avoidance. The house, once a sprawling sanctuary, now felt claustrophobic. Every hallway was charged. Every room was too small for both of us, and the memory that lived between us. That evening dinner with my father was excruciating. He spoke about concrete and zoning permits, his tone brisk and oblivious. Across the table, Clara barely touched her food. The air was thick with what we weren't saying, an invisible opera of stolen glances and restraint. I felt like a liar simply by existing in the same room with him. What do you do when a single moment redraws the boundaries of your entire life? When a line you never even imagined crossing is suddenly behind you? Tell me in the comments. Truly, I want to know. The next morning, I found it slipped under my bedroom door. An envelope, her handwriting unmistakable, fluid, and elegant. "We need to talk after your father leaves for work." My pulse throbbed in my throat. This was the point of no return. When I entered the kitchen, sunlight spilled through the bay window, making the dust motes swirl like tiny aimless planets. Clara sat at the table, both hands wrapped around her coffee mug, as though the porcelain might anchor her. She looked fragile, more so than I'd ever seen. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes lifted to mine, storm-tossed and uncertain. "About yesterday." She didn't need to finish. I sat opposite her. The polished wood between us felt like an ocean. She spoke first of a loneliness she'd never named. A feeling more like a business partner than a wife. of how that moment in the bathroom had woken something she thought had been buried years ago. It was like waking up, she said softly, her gaze fixed on her coffee. And it terrified me. Her words tore something open in me. I told her I couldn't erase the image from my mind, that her presence in the house had become a magnetic force, tugging at me constantly. That in one stolen, shocking moment, I'd felt a jolt of life that was both exhilarating and deeply, horribly wrong. The air thickened with our confessions, and then her hand moved across the table. Fingers brushed mine, a feather-light contact, yet it felt like lightning had found me. Before reason could speak, we were both standing. I couldn't tell you who moved first. It was a surrender, made in unison. The sun caught the silver in her hair, weaving it into a halo. Her eyes holding equal parts, longing and fear searched mine. Then the distance between us dissolved. Our lips met, not with the urgency of hunger, but with the fragility of a question. The warmth of coffee lingered, mingled with the faint salt of unshed tears. It lasted only a few seconds, but in those seconds, something irrevocable was sealed. We broke apart, the tidal weight of our choice crashing over us. "This is wrong," she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. But her eyes told an entirely different story. Her eyes were full of the same aching hunger that churned inside me. I should have agreed with her. I should have stepped back, walked away, maybe even left the house and never returned. But my feet felt nailed to the floor, my body a prisoner to the pull she now had over me. The days that followed became a torturous ballet. We moved around each other in careful circles, a choreography of stolen glances, at the dinner table of accidental brushes in the hallway that left my skin tingling long after the contact ended. Every moment we found ourselves alone was thick with an unspoken electricity, the kind that both exhilarates and terrifies. I began inventing reasons to stay home, pretending to be buried in my job search, when in truth, all I was hunting for were fleeting seconds of her attention. One afternoon, I found her in the library. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, spilling gold over the rows of books. She stood on a small step-ladder, reaching for a volume on the highest shelf. I offered, my voice rougher than intended. I stepped in behind her close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. Reaching upward, my arm brushed against her side, my chest pressing lightly to her back. I caught the faint lavender in her hair, the smooth softness of the fabric against her skin. My hand found the book, but my fingers trembled, and in the stillness, I could hear her breath quicken, matching the rhythm of my own. That's when the crunch of tires on gravel shattered the moment. My father's car. He was home early. We broke apart like startled deer, our faces burning with adrenaline and guilt. Seconds later, he entered to find me holding a book on architectural history, while Clara was dusting a shelf with exaggerated nonchalance. "Everything all right?" he asked, glancing between us. "You both look a bit flushed." "Just job stress, Dad." I lied the words, tasting like ash in my mouth. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The house suddenly felt too small, its walls too thin. From their bedroom, I could hear the faint hum of the television, and I imagined her lying beside him. The thought was a blade twisting in my gut, jealousy, tangled with self-loathing. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize, but a message I knew was hers. The garden. The old stone bench. Going was madness. Not going was impossible. She was already there, shadow among the moonlit hydrangeas. The night air was cool, but heat roared under my skin. "I can't stop thinking about you, Ethan," she whispered as I sat down. Our thighs touched, and the contact was like an electric current. I know this is insane. I know it's a betrayal. But I've never felt anything like this. I feel it too. I admitted my voice low, the confession hanging between us, like fragile glass. Then we were kissing this time without hesitation. Hungry, desperate. All the days of pent-up longing bursting free. Her hands found my hair, my chest. Mine traced the curve of her waist, pulling her closer. The open air, the risk of being seen, only fanned the fire. A distant dog barked, snapping us back to reality. We pulled apart, breathless, our hearts pounding in unison. Anyone could see us. We can't, she murmured, straightening her clothes. Not here. But her eyes didn't speak of ending. They promised something else when, not if. The following week was both exquisite torture and pure ecstasy. My father announced he'd be away for a week on business. 7 days. The house ours. We no longer had to steal moments. We could make them. We cooked together, our bodies brushing in the kitchen. We watched movies on the couch, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her. It was a dangerous fantasy playing house. We learned more than each other's bodies. We learned each other's truths. She told me of dreams from before she met my father, traveling the world, opening a small art studio. I told her my fears, the doubts, gnawing at my future. It was this intimacy, more than the physical, that terrified me most. Then came the morning everything truly broke. It was Tuesday. My father had been gone 2 days. She stood in the kitchen, making coffee, wearing that same silk robe from the first morning. But this time, when our eyes met, there was no accident. No surprise, only intent. There was no hesitation, only intent. Helena didn't utter a word. She closed the space between us slowly, her eyes locked onto mine, like they were the only anchor in a world that was spinning out of control. When she brushed against me, her hands slid under my t-shirt, cool fingertips against my fevered skin, and my breath caught. This kiss. It wasn't just a kiss. It was the culmination of every stolen glance, every touch we pretended didn't mean anything, every whispered confession made in the quiet hours when the rest of the world was asleep. It was desperate, unrestrained, and filled with a dangerous certainty that wiped away every shred of doubt. I lifted her effortlessly, placing her on the cool granite countertop, the same one where I'd eaten cereal every morning as a kid. Her robe fell open, and this time there was no shame, no hesitation, only the raw, undeniable truth of our desire. Her skin was impossibly soft beneath my hands, her breathing ragged against my neck, and there, in the golden wash of morning light spilling into the kitchen of my childhood home, we surrendered completely. Right and wrong ceased to exist. The past and the future blurred into nothing but the overwhelming reality of now. Afterwards, tangled in her bed, the air still heavy with the echo of what we'd done, reality began to creep back in. Guilt silent, but sharp, pressed at the edges of my mind. Leo, we can't take this back, she murmured, her fingers tracing idle shapes on my chest. I know I whispered, and I didn't want to, but the real world has a way of kicking down the door to any fantasy. Midweek, my father called. His trip was ending early. He'd be home in 2 days. Panic hit like a cold wave. Our stolen week was collapsing, and the end was rushing toward us. That final night was heavy with unspoken dread. We held each other like we were trying to memorize the feeling, as if we could bottle enough of it to last us a lifetime. When my father returned, he was all smiles and stories, oblivious to the earthquake that had shifted the foundation of his own home. Sitting at the dinner table again was torture. Every time he hugged Helena, it was a blade twisting deeper. Every time he clapped me on the shoulder, proud of my persistence in the job hunt, I felt like the lowest form of life. We both knew it couldn't last. The secret was a poison, and it was killing us from the inside. The final conversation happened, where the first one should have ended on the old stone bench in the garden, the light of day fading to gold. Leo, she began, her voice thick with sorrow. What we've done, it's built on a lie. Your father is a good man. He doesn't deserve this. She looked at me, then eyes bleeding. And you deserve something real, someone your own age, not this beautiful, impossible mess. Every word was true. Every word hurt. She was my father's wife. That fact could never change, no matter how real our feelings were. I should move out. I said the words like stones in my mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. I think that's for the best. But Leo, you need to know what happened between us wasn't just a fling. It wasn't some midlife crisis. You made me feel alive again. I pulled her into one last embrace, gentle, bittersweet, holding everything we could never say. A week later, I told my father I'd found a small apartment in the city, closer to work opportunities. He was thrilled, proud of my independence. Helena helped me pack our movements, careful, our hands never touching. Every shared glance was a silent goodbye. On the day I left, she stood on the porch, my father's arm draped casually around her shoulders. She gave me a small, sad smile. Our secret stayed locked inside the walls of that house. Months passed. I found a job. I even started dating someone. I'm building a life again, piece by piece. I still go home for dinners. Helena and I have perfected polite distance. But sometimes, across the table, our eyes meet. And in that brief flicker, I see it, the echo of the fire, the ghost of the storm, the memory of a love as wrong as it was real. A love that burned so bright, it was destined to burn out. Life doesn't follow rules. Love doesn't care about boundaries. Sometimes it leads you down a path you should never have taken, a path paved with betrayal and heartache. But it also shows you parts of yourself you didn't know existed. Our love was a beautiful mistake. Wrong, but ours. A secret I will carry forever. And in the end, maybe it's what we build from the ashes of our mistakes that defines who we really are. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, share it with someone who might understand. And subscribe for more stories from the heart of the storm.